exhausted. We've flown all night from New York to Johannesburg, and I haven't had a drink. Only 900 miles to go now, until we reach Ndola. My birthplace, my hometown. Ndola is the second largest city in Zambia, and now they're trying to leave. 1955, and now they're trying to leave.
We don't feel it as home, but it's quite convenient not having to move, not having to pack.
When I emigrated 30 years ago, life in Ndola was already difficult. One could feel the economy sinking. My father had been robbed so often, he'd taken to hiding the wages for his workers in a small, spotted briefcase I used to carry homework to and from school. One day, even that briefcase was stolen. Johannesburg was enemy territory then. Zambia was a frontline state in a war with South Africa. Whiteys were viewed with suspicion by the Zambian army and police. One could get locked up for taking photographs at sensitive locations, like airports. On paper, I was a citizen, but I felt like a foreigner, a guest in my own home.
See you at home.
See ya.
Yet, as soon as I left Ndola, I wanted to return. Once Africa gets in your blood, it's like malaria, it never leaves you.
Your origins aren't here, but you're born here and you've grown up here, and you feel an affinity to this place, like it's home, but it's not really home. It's like it's forever this like fight.
Remember that Ndola is 100 years old.
I was born in 1955, the year my parents came to Ndola. They have lived here for more than half a century, half of the city's existence.
One of our first invitations when we arrived in Ndola was to attend Nissim Elkheim's bar mitzvah, his 13th birthday, in 1955. Yeah.
I read a story once that around the time they arrived, a man-eating lion ate the night watchman outside the biggest department store in Ndola, the only department store, Tom's. This statue commemorates the attack, and so does this sign, a classic example of Zambian humor, black humor, if you will, the ability to make light of even the most desperate situation. In 2003, when my father was attacked, the situation in that government hospital on Broadway where I had been born was indeed desperate.
That's the main hospital here. And there are a number of private cottage hospitals, you could call them, hospitals or clinics, very expensive. And wherever you go, whether you go to the government hospital or to expensive private clinic hospitals, you've got to take your own food. Even here, you've got to have someone visit you to bring you your food, because there's no food served, not even a cup of tea served in these sort of places. And at one stage you had to bring your own sheets. So it's different that way. So when you go
His arm and skull had been broken by 3 bandits who had invaded our family's home. One had a club, another an axe. The third man with a gun had ordered my old man to lie down, face down. When he refused, they started bludgeoning him, making my mother watch. She described to me how he howled. He was a 77-year-old man, for Christ's sake. Thankfully, she said, we had enough cash in the house, or the implication was they would have killed him. When they were finished, the thieves sat down and counted out the money while my father lay bleeding on the floor. Then, having agreed on their shares, they walked out, hopped over the surrounding wall, and ran down to Chipulukusu, the slum below my mother's garden. I was trying to get sober when I heard, with less than a month of clean time under my belt. My first thought was, fear that, first of all, that, maybe I shouldn't be coming. This was too dangerous a place. When we were children, Chipulukusu was a marsh where we used to gather mushrooms when it rained. Now it is a sprawling suburb of more than 30,000 souls.
The lizard and its quarry depend on fog wafting in from the Atlantic seaboard for water.
Like Chipulukusu started as a squatter area, and the people started building their own houses without any plans at all.
If there is hell in the world, Chipulukusu is hell. The houses are one next to another, one next to another. There is no sanitation. It's hell.
Alec Mbewe lives in Chipulukusu. Every workday he walks several miles up the hill from his home in the valley to the Weinberg's house on the hill.
For almost 15 years. I didn't want to start work inside here as a cook. I like the environment of the outside.
I think naturally maybe, you see, Zambians, we are very docile by nature. We are not very militant, and we are very tolerant. We don't react to situations as I've seen, in other countries.
We're brought up to be humble and to
African
respect
culture
people,
is very,
and
despite the poverty, there's peace.
Yeah.
that's a very important thing. Despite the poverty, there's peace compared to Zimbabwe.
People, even if they are provoked, they would rather, discuss and seek reconciliation than saying, I should revenge.
So why then were my parents attacked? What were they doing in Zambia? Why have they stayed for more than 50 years in the house my father built? And how come I keep coming back to this place I still call home?
Do you consider yourself British?
I like to have it both ways. Immediately after the war, I thought the greatest thing would be to get United Nations citizenship, and a lot of people did in those days, because I've always felt that nationalism is is very, very dangerous and can be poisonous.
My parents first met in England during the Second World War.
We first met when we were both 17. I was at London School of Economics, which had evacuated to Cambridge, and he was in the Navy.
When the war was over, Mike returned to his native South Africa and enrolled in university. Margaret went out to Kenya, where her uncle was Governor General.
The first time I came to Africa was to Kenya, as it was then. I had just left Britain, which was in the grips of the winter of 1946, I think it was, and landed at Mombasa and went up by train to Nairobi and looked out in the morning to see vast herds of buck and giraffe and all the rest of it out of the train window. And I thought the whole of Africa was like that. I didn't realise the train was going to again. So then I lived in the lap of luxury for a year at Government House. It was very comfortable indeed, and it gave me a very false view of Africa, although Sir Philip Mitchell was very he was a socialist himself, and he was very pro-African. In fact, he incurred the wrath of the settlers because of his pro-African stance, and so it was interesting, but I was pretty young and stupid, I think, so I didn't really benefit from the experience as much as I might have done.
After university, Mike got a job building roads in remote regions of colonial Africa. 5 years later, he went to England and proposed to my mother.
And that was that.
Oh, what happened? How did he sweep you off your feet?
We met outside South Africa House. He always claims that I was the only one of his girlfriends whose phone number hadn't changed. No, I don't know. We just got to know each other better.
Here in this country for?
Adventure.
Are we answering any need at all? We have safe houses, walls, locked gates, food on our table, but we come for the good of our health here.
I always fancy the Andes actually in the Amazon.
But
you came here.
Zambezi was a big river, right. but from the beginning, Amazon always attracted me. No, the name, I think. Possibly I read a good story about it sometime.
And Zambia, you ended up here.
It's a beautiful place, beautiful country, good climate. I like it here. My husband was working in the mines and he was transferred to Kitwe, so of course I had to follow him. So I worked in Kitwe for 2 years. Then my husband was shifted again to Ndola.
This on the right is where we stayed the first night. This was a double-storied building when it caught fire. That was the Selborne Hotel.
We flew up here to Ndola with little Jimmy, and we stayed the first few weeks in the Selborne Hotel. It was a pub really, but it did have rooms. And then one night we'd gone to bed and were asleep, and someone came crashing in the door and mistook Jimmy's cot for the urinal and started to pee on him. And we jumped up with an almighty shout and he disappeared. That was the sort of place it was.
Ndola was a very important centre, commercial centre for the Copperbelt, because it could service, as you see on a map, these other mining towns. But it wasn't so much that, it was a government centre. This is where the provincial commissioner lived, and all the important government offices, both police, civil, tax, forestry, customs, the High Court.
Ndola is the provincial headquarters of the Copperbelt province. The history is that it was a stopover for the slave trade. People who are coming from East Africa and coming to get people as slaves in Zambia. And I think we have a tree which is called the slave trade tree, somewhere in the southern part of the city. And then when the rail line was brought from Victoria, from South Africa, coming through what was then Southern Rhodesia, it stopped here and they established a post.
In 1902, an Englishman had staked his claim to the copper deposits at Bwanamukubwa near Ndola. Cecil Rhodes's dream of a railway from Cape Town to Cairo was partially realized when the line of rail reached Bwanamukubwa in 1908. Thus connected to the ports of South Africa, the Northern Rhodesian Copperbelt quickly became one of the largest mining developments in the world. The British had awarded a private company authority to exploit the minerals and administer the territory north of the Zambezi. This British South Africa company halted the Arab slave trade, but then imposed a tax on the Africans which, because it compelled them to come up with cash, in effect forced them into wage slavery. Historians have identified resistance to this tax as the beginnings of Zambia's independence movement. What it also produced was black migration from rural areas to the cash economy of the Copperbelt.
These are copper concentrates. They're sweeping it up because this is all worth money. That's why they're sweeping it up, not to make it tidy, but because it's valuable.
Copper was booming. We all came here at that time, hoping for that sort of goodie.
I was transferred to Ndola to build or finish the construction of the power station.
When he finished the power station, Mike started his own construction business with one hand-operated cement mixer and a second-hand pickup truck. One of the first things he built was our house on Lowenthal Street. He also got involved in politics.
Kenneth Kaunda came to this house and actually slept in my bed here. He was resting between speeches.
The 60s in Ndola, as in the rest of the world, was an era of dramatic change.
Zambia Congress banned, all leaders arrested. Benson compares the members with Murder Inc. racketeers. The three top Zambia men, Kenneth Kaunda, President, Mr. M. Supalo, Secretary General, and Mr. S. Kapwepwe, Treasurer General, have all been detained.
This was Patrice Lumumba in June 1960. Less than 2 weeks in the future lay the army mutiny that would plunge the Congo into near chaos.
The Congo, or Zaire as it was called, or even before that, it was Belgian Congo, is only 5 miles up the train track.
One of my first memories is of a strange train whistle in the middle of the night. It was a Belgian train bringing refugees out of the Congo.
You hear the train?
The future of the United Nations lies at stake upon the Congo issue. Hammarskjöld and the World Organization were defended by American Ambassador Adlai Stevenson against what he termed a Russian declaration of war. Stevenson's speech is interrupted by a well-organized demonstration in the gallery. Most of the group are American Negroes, members of African nationalist groups in New York. It's the most violent demonstration by spectators in the World Organization's history. The effect is to underscore the gravity of the Soviet threat. But Hammarskjöld stands firm, refusing to bow to communist pressure.
Dag Hammarskjöld was attempting to resolve the Congo crisis when his plane crashed under mysterious circumstances 4 miles from Ndola. My mother and father heard the news while they were waiting at the airport for him to land.
This was sun-spun bananas. This is where, after the Dag Hammarskjöld crash, all the bodies were kept in the fridge there.
But they were not only spectators. They were active participants in the civil rights struggle that was transforming Northern Rhodesia into the new independent Republic of Zambia.
I was the first black town clerk here in Ndola, as well as I think I was first in the whole of the country.
None of us had really had any close contact with many Africans who were political leaders.
It must have been when I was at LSE, I suppose. I had a Ghanaian boyfriend for a time. Yeah.
At that time, the posts of town clerks in the various cities and towns were held by expatriates.
My political activities really were only a minor contribution. Prior to independence, a few of us, a number of us, decided that the status quo was no longer appropriate, and we formed, a Liberal Party was formed under the leadership of Sir John Moffat, but the measure of our support as Liberals was manifested by the fact that we all lost our deposits. In other words, we got about 2.5%. And then I stood as a supporter of United National Independence Party, who were the founding fathers, you could say, of the new Zambia. When we canvassed people, almost door-to-door canvassing, we were convinced that we were going to do fairly well. People don't have the strength of courage or moral fibre to tell you, no, they're not going to vote for you, they're going to vote for them. I can only think of about 2 or 3 rabid racists who said there was no chance they would vote for us.
Mr. Wanbeck is finished, he's now retired. He's Ndola.
Where's the daddy now?
He's at home.
But otherwise, you'd never get a straight answer. You'd get letters of commiseration afterwards, but that's about all.
You see, he has done something here in Zambia, especially in Ndola,
That's right.
yes, northern province. The whole Zambia has done something.
Sir John Moffat was a great person, but we failed.
We have to give him a credit.
That's right.
You see, we have to give him a credit. Honestly, he has done something here.
When Margaret started worshipping at Holy Nativity in 1955, the congregation was all white and almost all English. Sometime in the 60s, she began bringing a black woman from the Mothers' Union to services here, giving them lifts in our car, an aptly named Vanguard. When independence came, most of Ndola's whites emigrated rather than live under majority rule, and Holy Nativity began to look and sound more like those Mothers' Union meetings in the townships.
And then, quite revolutionary, bearing in mind the racism and apartheid system that prevailed. We were licensed for one of the first non-racial bars, because up until then, this had been the early 60s, it was illegal to sell a black man liquor, and let alone have him drinking in the same bar. And so that was 3 or 4 of us, founded this bar called the Sunrise Bar. Sunrise being the English name equivalent of Kwacha, and Kwacha was a political slogan meaning dawn, which in a way means freedom as well.
God for me, my daughter.
I want to be an accountant because I am good in maths. I will keep my family and find a place where to stay.
This one is Lucky. My firstborn, second, the third one is the one who is sleeping.
Lucky, do you want to go to school? Yes.
I don't have money to send him to school.
What do you do when you're not in school?
Speak up, Lucky. You don't do anything.
I've been training for 25 years, with hard exercise and hard, strenuous exercise. That time I push, it's more than, I put 60 liters of water inside.
How much?
60 liters of water. So I've done 13 now. It's 2 more to go. So I reached black belt when I went to train with the Japanese master. The way my master came into Zambia, he came as a lecturer at Nortec Technical College to teach refrigeration and air conditioning. When I was going back into Japan, he promised that he would come back in 10 years, but it's been more than 10 years now. I've just been waiting, nothing, there's nothing happening.
How long have you been in Ndola, Esther?
From my childhood.
I see. And how about you, Alec?
Huh?
Alec.
1987.
Right.
Yes. That's when I came to Ndola. I was just doing casual work here and there. Yeah. And that's when Mr. Sakara actually found some work here to work for Bwana. And that's how I came up with him here.
Who is Bwana?
Miss Wembe. The man who was working inside left, and then that's how I ended up again coming inside.
Was that the first time you worked inside?
Yes, but normally my hobby has been, partly doing cooking. Yes, I think the whole thing was engineered by Mr. Sakala because I stayed with Mr. Sakala, and normally I was found in the kitchen. So Mr. Sakala told Bwana that maybe you can try him. So that's how Bwana forced me to start inside.
So he just forced you?
Well, I was forced. I actually wasn't. I didn't want to. Yes. I just wanted. I liked gardening, even from my childhood. I liked gardening. Yes. But I couldn't refuse because there was nobody to do the job inside.
Do you remember your first day when you came here?
2nd February 1992.
Wow. How did you yeah, sure, sorry. Hey.
So when we arrived here, there was nothing here. This was a rocky dirt road. We bought this as a plot of land, thinking two things. We thought that the railway marshalling yard would move out to Bwanamakuba, so we wouldn't have the noise of shunting and marshalling of trains, and that also the line with Kariba power would be chained to electricity, so there wouldn't be that noise. Unfortunately, neither happened. The trains, if anything, the diesel trains, if anything, make more noise than the steam trains, and of course the marshalling yard also never moved to Bwanamakuba. This was built as a cheap house. There was no pretense at using any exotic materials whatsoever, all done by our own workmen. The only expensive feature of the house was probably the floor in the living room, but the rest is cheap, 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 cheap. Remember, we were educating 5 children, sending 5 children away to boarding school.
So we have answered number 2, question 2. Now we go to question 3. They are saying below BD, this is the line BD, construct another isosceles triangle. So we are going to construct another isosceles triangle. This time, the triangle that we are going to construct, it should be BCD.
Yosefe School was opened in 1959 in a village under a very big tree. Currently, the school has a population of 870 pupils against 19 members of staff.
Now I want us to write, I see a I see a
Now the staff is doing everything possible to provide education to the needy pupils, as we know that education is a right.
Quiet, you will sit down. Sit down. Very good. Clappers for her.
Education was a central plank in the United National Independence Party platform. As UNIP supporters, my parents attended Zambia's Independence Day celebrations. I wanted to go, but I couldn't. I was already at boarding school in southern Rhodesia.
One Zambia, one nation.
Immediately after independence, there was what was called a transitional development plan, put together very, very quickly to build schools. We'd go right into a remote area, there's nothing else there virtually, and we'd build a secondary school. Because it was important to be able to supervise. I flew myself. I became a fairly proficient pilot, had 3 planes in the end. None of the main roads were metalled or tarred, they were all dirt. In the rains, it was a problem. If a school was being built, we'd be told, build it here, and someone would put his heel in the ground and say, this is the corner, and start from here.
In the 70s, 5 different African liberation armies used Zambia as their base. The white South Africans and Rhodesians retaliated by sabotaging Zambian bridges and buildings. The struggle cost Zambia dearly, Many civilians were killed.
In terms of resources, we spent quite a lot, because at the time of independence, we had a lot of foreign reserves. But because of the deliberate policy of supporting these other freedom fighters, it was a lot of money being spent by our government. And I think that contributed to our economy sort of getting bad.
It all stems back from Kaunda's days, when it was a one-party state, and the whole, we had, across the border, we had there was the Zimbabwe war, Rhodesian Bush War. Zambia was supporting the cause sort of thing, and there was this whole paranoia about South African spies and Rhodesian spies and all that sort of stuff, and we had curfews, and it was, this whole paranoia, you didn't, I remember growing up as a child, even, when you spoke to someone on the phone, you didn't say, even as a child, what would a child say? But, you didn't say stuff that could incriminate you, and all of our mail was opened and looked at by the postal people, and it just growing up in that, you're just forever conscious of, what you're saying. It's not just, I suppose there's the element of,
What could have incriminated you?
I don't know, I was a kid.
So why did you decide to come back to Zambia?
Australia, it's a fantastic country, and it's very like Africa, but I was just very lonely. My folks were getting old, and I felt that I hadn't spent any time with them. I grew up and I went to boarding school when I was 11, and although I came back for holidays, it was like, there was like I suppose there was a gap that I had to fill.
The government schools were reasonable up until about 1971.
At that time, the economy started declining, and it was quite a big challenge to maintain the services. But it was not as bad as later on in the 90s, when the economy actually went diving down, and this is what we are now experiencing in the cities.
In 1985, I was attacked. By that time, Kaunda was president of this country. That's when I went now into revenge. I became confused of when I remember about how I was attacked. Then I realized that I would kill someone, because I nearly killed someone. I hit someone on the neck, and he went down like that. He fainted for some time, or up to maybe 5 minutes or so. So up to now, I avoid fights, and I know I'm very dangerous now. I'm able to kill, I'm able to defend myself. So I just teach self-defense techniques and physical fitness for the ladies, the old, the young, and everyone in the world.
President Kaunda was being influenced by people we thought had too much influence. And so I went to see him in State House. I managed to get an audience with him. And the purpose of my visit was to say to him, recognize your friends. You've got friends here. The fact that there's some people cheating you is no reason not to recognize your friends here. And he said to me, Mr. Weinberg, Zambia is a very difficult country to govern. But he never really recognized his friends. He'd always be going off with some harebrained scheme and being confused. So we were glad to see the last of him.
President Kaunda was voted out of office after 27 years in power, and Frederick Chiluba was sworn in as president.
People of Zambia, without fear, favor, or ill will. So help me God.
UNIP, which had been the sole legal political party, was replaced by the Multi-Party Movement for Democracy, or MMD.
We were delighted, everyone was delighted that we had, remember we didn't have a vote, but we would attend the rallies and we would support in that way, and we'd previously supported UNIP.
MMD began to dismantle the dilapidated machinery of a centralized socialist economy. All governmental enterprises, from the world-scale copper mines to the smallest state-owned dry-cleaning shop, were privatized.
Okay, we have most of the companies privatized, but I think it has brought a lot of mess as well.
Because our government is stealing our political things.
Just political.
It's stealing, only fucking stealing money. Yeah, that's why we are coming down on that.
Socialism had been discredited. The West had won the Cold War. The victorious capitalist powers insisted that the MMD adopt the most radical neoliberal market policies in Africa. The result was a massive devaluation of Zambia's currency, the kwacha, and the collapse of Ndola's industrial base.
Where industries used to be, okay, they are still there, but they are now white elephants with a lot of grass.
Yeah, more grass.
Most of them closed up.
Yeah.
Ndola used to be an industrial town, but it no longer is.
Local manufacturers were destroyed by a flood of cheap imports, mostly from South Africa.
All those fledgling manufacturing businesses closed down when Chiluba came in and opened up trade with South Africa.
People were told to stop relying on government and start fending for themselves.
If you want anything in life, you got to work for it. And if you got a goal, you got to work for it. Nobody's going to give you anything for free.
They are entrepreneurs now taking a chance, and they are new people.
We're trying to revive the old track, which was originally here. And we've introduced a new track, which is the flat track. And with the help of sponsors, we've managed to put up floodlights so we can have this event. In fact, I think it's the only one in Zambia at the moment with under floodlights. We've brought in a lot of new riders, new people who've come and tasted, and they've been bitten by the bug.
So we have some whiskey drinkers in Ndola.
It's just speed and guts.
Right now we're in a copper boom, and it's a mining boom where some people are going to get very rich indeed. The price of copper is at an all-time high. So people who are miners, people who are in management at these companies, they're getting stock options. They're getting stock options. There are many millionaires on the copper belt, almost all of them white, who've been able to benefit from this worldwide price of copper rising, and a tiny little bit of that is going to trickle down to the average Zambian, a minute percentage. Since the copperbelt mines were privatized, foreigners have invested more than $2 billion, but they drove a hard bargain. Critics of the privatization complain that the investors were treated too favorably, that the process was corrupt, that the private mining companies are violating environmental and work safety standards, that they don't invest in Zambia's social welfare, and have rolled back 40 years of gains for Zambian labor. Government argues that it got the best deal for the mines available at the time. Globalization has given Zambia no alternative but to open its economy to world competition. Yet it does seem as if the profits from copper are going elsewhere, leaving the people of cities like Ndola to fight over the scraps.
I used my simple initiative just to start this business. We collect some pieces in a form of scrap metals and we try to come and assemble them. I stopped my job at the level of head museum attendant. And sincerely, I was retired in 2001. Up to now, I haven't been given my benefits.
When you don't have money, you can't develop anything. So money can work. When there is money, you can develop. So what is needed is capital.
Facilities in the hospital were just going down and down and down.
The bad thing in the government schools is that they are always going on strike.
I'd send 4 kids to the States. Because this is the point of going to university here. Half the time they'll be on strike. It's all doing a 3-year course, it's doing it in 6 years.
You'll find there's a very big difference between the government schools and the community schools. Those in the community schools will learn more than those in the government schools. I mean, they are getting that free education, while the government ones, sometimes they have to pay.
They have closed.
No. We had hoped to follow Marjorie during a typical day at school, but as we approached her classroom, we were stopped.
No, not your friends. You come to school alone.
So this is the kind of children you want to assist?
Are you seeing?
Very bad.
Okay, sorry. Sorry,
We didn't understand what had happened.
Why didn't you go to school today?
They said that on Monday, there were the people at Stekatane, they were going to play football at the Commando. Even this they know.
Marjorie's story sounded like a Zambian version of the dog ate my homework excuse.
Okay, sorry.
My visitors coming. But I'm sorry for this encounter. It appears the mother of a girl didn't know exactly what to do.
Good afternoon, class. Good afternoon, Uncle Red Beanstalk. How are you today? Fine, thank you. And how are you, sir? Today I'm your school. Oh, sorry, I meant your teacher. Dine wisi Kalumbi, Anabunka Land Rover. Mr. Banda, Kosa Shusha. Sit on your decks, all of you. Thank you, sir, very much. But first in the cheseko, I'm a dirty stockings. Now I'm a dirty nails. Dirty snails. They pull up your shoes. It's a part of polish your stockings. Open your mouth wide, say, I want to see your tooth decay. I'm a dentist day. Yellow man, come here, bring the shampoo.
Hello? Hello, Mrs. Bryce speaking. Can I help you? The school was founded by Hindus. The Ndola Education Trust are all Hindu. We find that there are a lot of families making huge sacrifices to send their children here because they know that what they're going to get is good.
this is the best school that I can come to, and I think it's the best school that Zambia has to offer.
Our inspiration is MTV.
Because we watch TV a lot more.
We're
more part of the
exposed.
global society. You know, we know that we're equal.
The dawn of satellite TV, I think, has, in a way, it's a bit like the snake coming into Eden.
It's really shown us how
It's shown us how the Western world lives, so we're trying to also imitate them and be exactly like them.
Most of them want to leave. They want to go to Australia or to America, UK, Canada. My sons are in America. The elder one is in Florida and the younger one is in California.
Do you miss them?
Of course I do, a lot.
Where were they born?
They were born in Zambia, in Kabwe, yeah.
Kabwe?
And they had their primary education here, and then they went to India for their secondary education because where I was staying in Kabwe, there were no good secondary schools. So I had to send them to the boarding schools in India.
I went to boarding school when I was 8. My siblings went away too.
I think he settled down fairly soon, but I wept all the way back in the train.
This is really a touchy question. They were 10 and 11. I feel sad about it. And I regret, for sending them to the boarding school. Because after the boarding school, they went to then America also. So I don't have them with me after that.
No, the opportunities in Ndola are very minimal. And when they finish college or they train, the best would be for them to seek employment outside Ndola. There is nothing, of any consequence in Ndola at the moment.
I, as a medical practitioner, am also an accredited doctor for doing medicals for people emigrating to Australia. And I ask people, why are you leaving this country? Where do your parents live? Where do your brothers and sisters live? They say in Zambia. I say, well, if you go away as a nurse or as a doctor, who's going to remain to look after them? And they say, I can't look after them even now as I am here, because the amount of money that I get paid is so little. I'm unable to do this. If I go out and work in Australia or in New Zealand, I might have a little bit to spare that I can send home and look after them better that way.
People who are educated abroad, they are staying there. They are supposed to come back and contribute to the country.
You know what is even sadder is that the level of professional competence of these people, the nurses in Zambia and the doctors in Zambia, is actually quite high. But people are prepared to leave nursing jobs, give up their nursing skills to go and do menial health jobs in England, for example.
They wanted to come back one time, but the Zambian government is very strict in giving citizenship.
Their presence in England or wherever it is in the UK is causing a major shortfall where they're coming from. I think it is like stealing from the poor, stealing from the dead almost,
Here's the biggest industry in Ndola, is the undertaking. One of the first persons that we knew to die of AIDS was a member of the flying club who was the president's son. That's Kaunda's son. And Kaunda then in Canada was open enough to admit that his own son had died of AIDS.
One of my nephews died and left 5 children, and I had to look after those 5. Another one left 1, another one left 2, 3. All those have now. At my age, we have to look after them. I'm not giving myself as the only example. This is a common factor. In fact, there are worse families than I am who can't stand this type of pressure. And if you went into the townships, I go to Lubuntu, for example, once every month, where my nephew left 5 children. The wife is still there, and she looks after the children. But I ensure that I visit them at least once a month. When I get to that place, you'll be surprised. I drive my car at that house, and 15, 16 little children are rushing to my car. Grandpa, 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 grandpa. 16, sometimes 20 of them. And I look around and say, what future these people got, these children?
That is point. Even if finished the schools, it can't go to find anywhere to work.
Are you naughty crazy, you naughty insane, you naughty sicky, my friend, you just high, you just high. Nina ukaniluka kuseni, nachimweo kapena ni malaria, akazi yanga wanipasa mankwada, manje na yebe ya isa sebenza, nina ima kupita kuchipatala, ati nikaone Dr. Patelo, nachikapena azazi watafuta, mweshua hopsi matenda, anapima blood pressure, apimira kumozi na mtima, nonifunza if nezo kumwa moba, chinaseka noni yankati. Are you naughty crazy, you naughty insane, you naughty sicky, my friend, you just high.
What?
Weinberg.
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 Same like Mr. Weinberg.
That's my father.
It's your father.
And this is my son, so
okay,
it's his grandfather. This is
sure. Jacob.
Jacob.
Myself, my name is Andrew Mlemba. Yes. Even you are a Zambian. You are coming in Zambia. You are a Zambian. Yeah. I can't say this is Muzungu. Where is coming from? No, Canada, what and what? No. We are a Zambian because you are living here in Zambia. You are a Zambian. Yes. It must to be communication between you and me. That's all. Yeah.
I had always believed that Ndola was my home, my bolt hole, a place to escape to, where my parents would protect me. And then they were attacked.
Ntchito za manje nzovuta shamwari. Ukaendao kwa tukabwere mahero. Ukaendao kwa tukabwere mahero. Ukalete pepara. Nyahao zone. Ni maenda ni masakira. Utini pesa kwa kalilo. Chito kalipe. Na singoloka mu mataoni. Utini pesa kwa kachito. Ati kulipe. Mama lemba na pageti. Kote yese tisive. Chito kalipe. Maskulo yebe tina kwanisa. Utini pesa kwa kachito. Ati palipe. Chito palipe sema lowa tingo paki lako. Zachita chani kuti na ise chisebe seko. Mapisi weki siyaoneka chito sebe ndiza vuta no vakansi. Maskulu tinasiriza. Tichoma chaba mukomboni no maplani. Kusenyi seni. Ticha lela kumatini. Kubichi muku. Chito za manjeni kusibo wachikaya. Ngati ulipa chita siwoneka banganesa. Machipu lulu. Gasuzi bika wagilasha. Masiku wanoni self-employment. Kuyamba chabo kawalala. Batina yopa. Mangani kwila no niponya mucha mboka yila paka wata. Tetu faya nenga tenga tawu kwete na mastata. Hela puti songa kupasa na bulemu. Kabili ntiwa lope ntiwa sasa. Jobu posho ni mkwala opezela nchita onde na yusinga. Batina manje nsito stiyi pesa. Zachita chani na vutika. Ni maenda ni masakira. Utini pesa kwa kalilo. Chito kalipe.
Dad had just come back and we were sitting here. He was pouring me a drink. I was sitting in that chair that I usually sit in. And there was a tremendous crash and the window shattered. And these three men jumped in. Then they threatened to shoot Dad. He immediately said, just calm down, said sleep, because I grabbed for the heavy lamp when I saw it was one man, but then when the three came through, one of them with a gun, obviously wasn't armed. The leader chap took my watch and told me to go find some dollars and followed me down. And while I was down there, they started clobbering Dad.
There was just like blood everywhere, like on the warming tray. the blood, obviously the warming tray had been hot or something, because the blood had all like cooked and curled up.
He had 3 ribs broken. He bled into his lungs. He had been hit over the head with an axe and protected his head by using his forearm. And as a result, his forearm was broken, but the head of the axe fell out of the wooden stick onto his head, and he had a gash that long where the axe would have gone through his skull.
He took them into his study where he had dollars in the cabinet, and I was taken in there too. And when they got the money, they ran off.
You know, he must perhaps have asked for it in some way, because he's not somebody who, when was told to lay down. He didn't do perhaps exactly as he was told.
Psychologically, it does affect one. You know, walking around in town and back here. You know, as Bridget said, if you see people down below here, Dad scoffs at her for saying, you know, they're not studying. They may well be studying. They may be studying the layout of the land.
When I got there, of course, Dad was his usual stiff upper lip, character. I mean, was it frightening?
It didn't frighten me, no. Nothing frightens me.
Which is admirable, but on the other hand, I feel that, perhaps scratch below the surface, and you do find somebody who's protecting himself from the idea that all those years of building up a culture and a civilization in Zambia has really come to very little long-term effect. It's, a measure of the lawlessness of the country that the policeman has to come on a bicycle.
They started interviewing Mum because Dad wasn't well enough to be interviewed. He was in the clinic. And the guy had had such a heavy night drinking that I could smell him from 20 meters away. And the woman was more interested in chatting to me about what was it? I don't know, mfui or something like that. And I was actually the one trying to prompt them, saying shouldn't you ask my mother this, or shouldn't you ask my mother that, or don't you want to see the scene? I mean, they didn't take a single fingerprint. They didn't have a look at Dad's study or anything. They were just not interested whatsoever.
Now, if you go 9 kilometers down this road, you come to the old Beazle farm. End result is that we failed in our target. None of these warning lights and these level crossings work, and many of the level crossings have no signs at all. This is one of your failed banks, Meridian failed bank, and that has been a monument to failure for the last 10 years.
Who cares to admit complete defeat? I hit bottom the same month my parents were attacked. My admission of abject failure and the desperate prayer that was hidden inside was my jumping off point for hope. I only stopped drinking when I realized I couldn't stop drinking. I needed help.
I understand that some of this Jewish cemetery area has been on occasions given to Protestants and to Muslims and that, because the whole place here is absolutely full. I stayed with his son in Israel, Abi Lowenthal. His brother used to sell truck tires, and he sold a set of truck tires which amounted to a large amount of money. Came the end of the month, he couldn't remember who he'd sold them to, but it could only be one of 3 people. So he said the safest thing is to send all 3 an invoice, and to his embarrassment 2 of those 3 people paid him. Yeah. There's no one that we feel particularly close to. That's one reason why you don't feel that this is home. It just happens to be, we happen to be here. Good morning.
Hello, how are you?
I'm showing my friends what a beautiful place you've got here.
Very fine.
I've got my gun, I'm going to shoot some nyama too.
In fact, you've just looked at we've just gone down about 5 impalas now.
Sure.
Yes.
Are you selling the nyama now?
On the buffet.
Sure.
Yes.
So I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Charming. Gun down 5 of them. Charming. Charming. Just gunned down. Selling the buffet. Yeah, different culture, isn't it? Obviously, we realise that we are what we are. We can't pretend to be Zambian. We can't pretend to be black.
They caught someone, and they wanted Mum to go and do an identity parade, and she basically wouldn't do it because in Zambia it's the death penalty, and it goes against her principles and that to put someone to death, even though, you know, they basically could have killed Dad.
Anyway, I don't want to talk about burglaries and things like that. It's a part of Zambia, but it's not by any means the whole story, is it?
He came to remove the black spots in our lives, and he could only do that by going through the sufferings, and he would be rejected, he would be killed.
I think that we sort of finished our time here, you know.
So the whites who do live in Ndola will just be...
wither away. Oh. I think so.
I don't live here. I don't really have any answers to these. I don't have any answer. I left because I didn't think there was any hope for Africa. On the 3rd Sunday in Lent, Alec took us to his church in Chupulukusu, the slum from which the attackers came. The attack had occurred during Lent, the season when Christians are supposed to suffer, to deprive themselves of pleasures like drinking. I had only been sober a couple of weeks when I heard, and my first response was weird, like I was still under the influence. I thought, my parents have finally achieved the meaning of their lives, martyrdom.
I think we can go and meet the priest. Yes.
You all to this morning's service. Every time when we have visitors, especially visitors from abroad, that each time they come, I ought to sing 1 or 2 songs. I know you have got a busy schedule, but you please bear with me. I'm just going to sing 2 short songs. Otherwise, I usually sing 10. But because time is not with us, I'm only going to sing 2.
Our visitors come, our visitors come. Let us enjoy our visitors come. Our visitors come, our visitors come. Let us enjoy our visitors come.
If they leave, you're basically washing your hands of this place. You know, and I don't think, on moral grounds, I don't think they're willing to do that, first of all. I think that they're in a way, they're like missionaries, my parents. They have a very strong ethical sense of obligation to the people that they know so well, you know, and have given them a pretty good life, you know, and to be frank, it was the labor of Africans that paid for my education and made it possible for me to, to go to the best schools in the world. And
what do you mean, labor of Africans?
Well, my father employed a lot of Africans and he made a profit on their labor. So, that profit was used to pay for his children to go to the best schools in the world.
There's always that question. What can I do for my country? Ichitemwiko chapwirika chakwalesa ngachawa pakati kai mwanali palino ichitayalenti. It's time to think of those who are in need. Time to suffer with Jesus Christ by remembering the 40 days and 40 nights that he suffered for me and you. 40 days and 40 nights without water, without food.
My aim is not to become a priest.
That's easy. No, he doesn't want to, but if God has proposed to be a priest, he will be a priest.
You have to give yourself fully, But I have to take a very big step, It's not easy just to automatically say, I want to be a priest.
Yeah, obviously.
That's what I thought religion was. Sacrifice, self-negation, a mild form of suicide. Like the time I was in college and decided to become a monk, so I cut off all my hair and burnt everything I'd ever written. The only way I could live as a white man in Africa was to live like a monk, to renounce everything. My instincts rebel against that extreme self-abnegation. It conflicts with the urge for self-preservation, the same urge that said to me, don't bring your wallet to Chipulukusu. So when the collection plate came around, I was woefully short, embarrassed. I gave the few kwachas I had in my pocket, feeling guilty, especially when I saw how generously the parishioners were giving. I was even more embarrassed to learn that the offerings at the altar were for us.
My Lord, you love me, and I know you love me. My Lord, you love me, and I know you love me. My Lord, you love me, and I know you love me. My Lord, you love me. Oh, my Lord, you love me, and I know you love me. My Lord, you love me. Oh, my Lord, you love me, and I know you love me. My Lord, you love me. Oh, my Lord, you love me, and I know you love me. My Lord, you love me. Oh, my Lord, you love me, and I know you love me. My Lord, you love me. Oh, my Lord, you love me.
Fear had made me stingy. The opposite of fear is love, giving without expecting any reward. These people who seemed to have so little had given us so much, we needed help to carry the gifts back home.
I've reached home now. Piro tuleba pera tubembireko nakalwimbo kalakeni ka verse fekamu. Baleyisa. Baleyisa. Nangu mumpere ndetara mukachuma.
Mrs. Ravensdale told me there was a terrible criminal in a bandit in Chipurakusi, so I'm glad that you came and accompanied.
Wanalesa le kulomba sokolola hako ukwete iwe wiwa no butani wasala wasapula wimube patichi kwete hako kwete wakupela. Thank you.
I think you get hope, actually, from doing things for other people. So they get hope not by thinking what is hope, not by sort of pondering the question philosophically. Hope is, praxis in a Marxist sense. You get hope by taking action. Mm-hmm. One of those annoying paradoxes that confound the cynic in me teaches that you cannot keep what you have been given unless you give it away.
And then we began to see the deaths, and for the last 2 years I was there, 2,000 died in each year of AIDS-related illnesses. And they were being brought in from the compounds and dumped half dead or just breathing their last into casualty, and relatives would go. Because they couldn't have a death if it was a death in the compound, it was a police case.
Here you get nothing for your tax, nothing whatsoever. You name what you take for granted in the developed world, it's not here. So, but you get a great opportunity here, possibly, if you want to participate in the community social needs, whether it's mum teaching the women to do whatever she does, teach them, me to provide a little expertise and support for people.
I was talking to Sister Philomena, and I was really frustrated at the facilities in the hospital were just going down and down and down. And then we heard that the council was selling beer halls. So Philomena and I went on a pub crawl. Philomena told me that Mr. Weinberg had retired and that he might be a help to start this thing, and that she told him to get up off of his rocking chair and to come and do something, not that she wasn't ready for retirement yet.
Chichetekelo Hospice in Luvuto. I don't know whether you've been there. Here, that scheme, that project started as it was a beer hall where we were selling the local beer called Chibuku, and it was a council building. And he helped us, Mr. Weinberg, helped us to turn that into a very, very useful hospice.
This was a beer hall, and the grass was growing up taller than your grandfather when we first came here. We got it from the council, at least they wanted money for it. It was a big saga of getting it because Mr. Chenda was asking for 10 million. I said, Mr. Chenda, we don't have any money. Most of the place is not painted because Mr. Weinberg was very practical, no wasting of money on paint or anything else for the outside walls, you know. Right. And he insists, I think there's a Jewish streak in him, is there? Is he half Jew? Yeah. Anyway, sparing money. He says that this place cost 1/3 less because of the way he spared materials and everything else in the building. There was a hatch there, and the beer was sold out through the hatch there. And the men sat around, and there was a cement seating all around there. And in fact, we admitted a man here once, and he was very sorry for himself. And he said, last time I came here, I was looking for Chibuku. Now I'm getting Panadol.
What does chichetekelo mean to you?
If ninga kwatira mu chichetekelo bantu ine nalipera n'omutima wonse tinakula singa.
She gives the whole her heart. Inganda yakutekera pa abalwere. It's a home. It means trust.
Trust.
Chichetekelo, you trust in the Lord.
Trust in the Lord.
Chichetekelo means hope.
That's an interesting choice. You know, this is a place where people come to die, but they wanted to call it hope.
Hope. Well, I mean that death is not the end of it all.
You know, there's always hope, and we can always hang on to hope and faith that something will come through it. It will take time. We're a country that's very rich, and all we need is good governance and leaders to lead the way. And in time, I think we'll get there. I mean, if you look at the history of America, for example, I think, and I'm not 100% sure, I think they've had 51 presidents or 52 presidents. And so it's taken them 52 presidents to get to where they are today. America was very much like Zambia. Zambia, this is our 3rd president we've ever had in the country.
You don't get hope by, twiddling your thumbs, staring at your navel. You get hope by giving hope, by taking, doing things for other people.
The thing is, I'm now in charge of, I'm a secretary at church now. I received Jesus, so I'm now going into church now.
How do you think that could look like for you? For me, I think it actually would be in making this film. In making this film for me and capturing what people are like here, so that people over there on that side of and I always feel like people on that side of the world, including me when I'm on that side of the world, have no perception of the reality of people on this side of the world. There's somehow you go over there and you lose sight of the reality. Just as my reaction was fear over there, like I've got to get my parents out of there. And then I come here and I suddenly see why they want to stay here. It seems as if community is a key to hope. Sharing your experience, telling your story, encouraging others gives you courage too. But there is that paradox. You have to let go if you want to hold on to hope.
So how do you feel about leaving Africa?
Don't ask me too much now. Yeah, 45 years in Africa. It's not easy. It's not easy. But that is the final confirmation of a missionary, is that you don't put down roots. You move on. You move on, and you don't. And if I have to stay here and it won't go on without me, then I haven't done a reasonable job with what's going on here. You're so happy. Yes. Imagine, I thought you'd be lonesome. I thought you would be lonely.
And so I thank you very much for saving my life.
Apiriana bwera kuchoka kuwalare.
It's hard to imagine Ndola without my parents, just as it is difficult to comprehend one's own death, the idea of the world without us in it. But there is a future, or so we believe, and so we hope. And maybe we are in it, and the spirits of our ancestors, of all who have lived here. In 2008, the Zambian government passed a law that raised their share of mining profits by 500%. And I celebrated 5 years since my last alcoholic drink.
Anayangana mumwamba, nayangana pansi. Apiri anaganiza chochita chana chione. Apiri anaganiza chochita chana chione. Apiri anabwera kuchoka kuwalare. Anankala koza kazo sawerenge kanditu. Obwera kumuzi anabwera ni sutukesi. Mukati mwa sutukesi munalibe kantushua. Mukati mwa sutukesi munalibe kantushua. Apiri anaganiza sononiza enda kuti makolo anga onse anamwalira kudala. Apiri anaganiza sononiza enda kuti makolo anga onse anamwalira kudala. Apiri anaganiza sononiza enda kuti makolo anga onse anamwalira kudala. Apiri anaganiza sononiza enda kuti makolo anga onse anamwalira kudala mama. wa mulungu mwankala zaka zambiri shuwa makolo ano amayi wala shuwa mwabwera muli endalama mwana muliye nanga chimene munapeza kuti ichiyani sorry anaganiza sono nizaenda kuti makolo anga onse anamwalira kudala apiri anaganiza sono nizaenda kuti makolo anga onse anamwalira kudala